I've been a faculty member for 8 years now, and I still feel like I'm working on my mentorship and learning how to be a better mentor. And I'm also still a mentee at the same time, and that's something that we're going to touch on a little bit too. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then we'll get into the conversation. Please do feel free to chime in if you have a question to ask. And I'm also very happy to take questions after. I will also try to pay attention to the chat, but I'm notoriously bad at that. So if I miss something in the chat, again, please feel free to pop in. So again, I'm Dr. Rochelle Hines. I have a PhD in neuroscience. I have been a faculty member at UNLV for 8 years, as I said. I am now a tenured associate professor, which feels pretty great. And again, my area is neuroscience. I'm housed in the Department of Psychology. So some of the things that we'll talk about today have a bit of that sort of science focus to them. But I think all of the things that we will talk about apply equally across all disciplines here at UNLV. So even though some of them, might be from the National Institutes of Health, for example, the resources, the skills and things that you would learn from tapping into those resources will be very transferable. The topic here is next level mentoring, and this is sort of a follow-up to an earlier grad academy that I did on mentor and mentee relationships. And so I'm going to recap a little bit about what was talked about there because we'll be building on it today, but don't feel like if you didn't see that one, you can't stay and gain something from this one. And if you do want to see back, go back and circle around to see that one. It is posted on the Grad Academy already. So one major recap from that prior conversation is we looked at mentor-mentee relationships. And basically, the main takeaway here is that they're complex and they're multifaceted, especially when we're doing this well. Another thing that we looked at is that because they're so complex, it's hard to expect any mentor or any mentee to be great at all of these aspects simultaneously. And so we talked a little bit about, how do we actually find, support for different aspects that we need. And we talked about building mentoring networks or holistic mentoring, that's responsive to the types of things that we feel that we need most essentially. And we also talked about how establishing a strong mentor-mentee relationship is really, really centered around communication. And the things that we need to be able to communicate about include our expectations. So what do we as mentees expect, and what does the mentor expect in turn from us? And also boundaries. And setting boundaries is extremely difficult. So we talked a little bit about setting boundaries. What are examples of boundaries? And how do you know from a mentor perspective or a mentee perspective, when a boundary has been crossed, and how do you help recover from that situation? Because it does happen, unintentionally most of the time. We also talked about how do we build these mentor networks. So again, we can't really expect one person to provide all of these aspects. And so we can look outside and recruit additional people to work on our team with us. And, again, this really can shift the dynamic from being, sort of dependent on one person, that has this resource that you're trying to get, to feeling more in power and control. And what we're going to really expand on today is how we can move from having this, hard skills relationship between the mentor and the mentee to having a more holistic and more multifaceted relationship. And then also at the same time, you guys are probably at least starting to be a mentor yourself. You're working with junior students in your group, or undergraduate students, or, getting ready to go off to a postdoctoral position where you might do a whole lot of mentoring that maybe you haven't been wholly prepared for. When I was a postdoc, I did loads of mentoring as a faculty member. Obviously, that's a massive part of my position, but I didn't receive any formal training in mentoring, which again is wild. So that's why I'm super glad you guys are here. Hopefully this will spur you to get additional development in that area because it is such a core part. So again, we're going to really dive into some of these other aspects of mentoring and how we can be better mentors by addressing them, and also how, as mentees, we could seek out people to fulfill some of these additional aspects that are less addressed in many mentor-mentee relationships. We did also talk a little bit about individualized development plans. And again, this comes up again today a bit in a different way because that individualized aspect really matters. We're going to talk about individually responsive and culturally responsive mentorship styles that are linked to really improved success from mentoring relationships. And so again, I would encourage everyone that doesn't have an individualized development plan developed to develop one. And if you're a mentor, you could work with your mentee to develop one of these and discuss it with them. So this is the recap. I'm not going to read it all to you, but again, this just covers what we talked about the last time. What we're really going to try to do today is dig deeper into mentorship skills. And we're going to really try to see what the key skills of effective mentors are. And also in this, learn more about sort of the soft skills of mentoring. And we're going to take a closer look at hard skills versus soft skills. And especially, we're going to take a close look at culturally responsive mentorship. UNLV is extremely proud to be a minority serving institution. We have an incredibly diverse campus. And culturally responsive mentorship is a very important aspect of many of the mentor-mentee relationships on our campus in particular. But this is a growing area of focus for many mentorship training programs. And again, I would like to expose you guys, even just in small part, to strategies for culturally responsive mentorship. I also want to touch on some of the transferable skills that you develop through mentor-mentee relationships. And again, the focus here is going to be soft skills and how really, you know, as you're finishing your PhD and heading out into the workplace, you can start to talk about these and leverage them because these are highly sought after in many workplaces, more now so than ever. And then we'll also take a brief look at some resources. There are actually tons of incredible things going on campus, and I'll touch on them because I'm proud of the work that my colleagues on campus are doing. And then I'll also show you some external resources where you can get additional information. There's actually some really good stuff out there. So I encourage you to check that out to get more training or more exposure as you need. So why does mentoring matter? Again, I said mentoring is probably one of the most important aspects of my job, and I really believe that. It is much more important than any one paper that I would publish. The impact that I have on the people that choose to work with me is extremely important. And effective mentoring in a research setting or in a graduate studies setting has been linked to a sense of belonging and self-efficacy. And these aspects are really important for people to be retained in fields, especially challenging fields like STEM fields or sort of exclusive fields. If you don't have that sense of belonging and you don't feel like you're effective or you have the right skills to be effective in that discipline, it's going to be extremely hard for you to stay in that discipline. Effective mentoring has also been linked to persistence. So being able to work on hard problems, persist with them, and see them through to their finish. And again, persistence is also related to retention, being retained in your program, persisting and finishing your PhD, which is hard. It is. It's really hard. Effective mentoring is also very linked to productivity. So even if a mentor is not so worried about the other aspects, they should at least be concerned for their mentees' productivity. And again, if you feel this sense of belonging, if you feel like you're effective in the work that you do, and you feel capable, you're much more likely to, work away at something and be productive. And mentoring is also deeply linked to career satisfaction. So, even if we're accomplishing a lot, if we don't feel like we belong, if we don't feel like we're an integral part of the bigger discipline, we're definitely not going to be deriving that same level of satisfaction. And so again, building out mentor networks, if you are currently struggling with ineffective mentoring, or becoming an effective mentor so that you can provide some of these things to people, again, it will help increase your career satisfaction as well. So what are these attributes that we need for effective mentoring? And again, this is sort of that diagram that we talked over a little bit last time, but we're really going to go deeper into it. And what I find interesting about this diagram is that a lot of emphasis is placed on certain poles here. So a lot of people think mentoring is about, instructing people, transferring some sort of, practical skill to somebody. Or sometimes people see mentoring like critiquing, providing feedback to make a person, become better, or intervening if there is some sort of problem. But, these are really, really important aspects. This is one sort of core pillar of mentorship. And I would refer to all of these sort of as hard skills. But we don't spend a lot of emphasis on the other aspects of mentorship. So, aspects where we provide support and aspects where we might provide sponsorship. And so we're going to talk through those in more detail as well. So of course, we do need these hard skills. We need discipline-specific skills. We might need to develop specific research or creative activity skills. We're going to need to learn disciplinary knowledge, and you're doing that through coursework or interacting with others in your field. And you're probably doing a good bit of teaching. Teaching is a great way to be learning. You're developing technical skills. And as a mentor, you'll also need to accurately assess mentee understanding. And also, as a mentee, you need to be able to accurately assess your own strengths and weaknesses as well. And mentors should also value and practice ethical behavior and responsible conduct in the discipline. This is a really important hard skill that needs to be modeled to trainees and mentees. But again, this I would say is just one pillar. But many people think of this as like all you need to do for mentoring. So let's take a look at some of these other aspects. Another really important pillar for providing effective mentorship is sponsorship. So what does sponsorship mean? Sponsorship involves fostering mentee independence. So they won't be your mentee forever, and you have to get them ready for going on out into the real world where they're going to have to, respond to harsh criticisms on papers and struggle through grant rejections. And so, you have to carefully foster that independence. They need a good bit of support and guidance, but at a certain point, they also need to work through and solve their own problems. We also do, as mentors, need to promote professional development. So that might mean supporting students to go to conferences. And they're exposed to many other people in the discipline. They learn a tremendous amount. They develop self-efficacy. But this might also be sending them for training or encouraging them to participate in grad academy or other things that are offered on campus. We also want to help our mentees establish and foster professional networks. So some of this comes into where you as a mentee can seek additional mentors to build your network. But as a mentor, hopefully, you can also encourage your mentees to find additional points of contact, whether it be other faculty members on campus or, other outside resources as well. And another aspect is actively advocating on behalf of mentees. And this is a big one. This could be writing letters of recommendation. This could be recommending your mentees for positions or jobs. Nepotism is a massive, massive aspect of most career pathways. So, working with mentees, advocating for them, having them top of mind when you're thinking about opportunities. I still have mentors that advocate for me. They sign me up for prestigious grant reviews and nominate me for awards. And, that's extremely important to my continued career development as well. So continuing on with these more soft skills, we're going to focus on this support aspect. And interestingly, this support aspect forms several pillars of effective mentorship. So while we talked about those hard skills, that's just sort of like one major pillar grouped together. And, these other pillars, they are more focused on these softer skills. So the first soft skill or support skill that I want to talk about are interpersonal skills. So this is a big one. This involves listening actively and also working to align with your mentee or your mentor, depending on your role, on expectations, goals, and boundaries. And again, these are really important aspects. And sometimes this communication feels challenging, but it's always better to have that conversation. We also really need to work on building trusting relationships in mentor-mentee relationships. That communication becomes immediately easier if there is trust. And again, ideally, we want to set up the relationship where we can have open, clear, and honest communication. And the skills that you develop to work toward these goals are, again, really, really critical in other areas of your life as well. I think if you can learn these skills and become a good mentor or a great mentee with good communication, it's going to improve all of your relationships. Because again, communication is so fundamental. We're always going to encounter challenges and problems. And when we can communicate and work through them, it just gets better. Another key support or soft skill aspect are psychosocial skills. So as mentors, sometimes we need to be able to stoke or spur a person's motivation. Projects always have lulls or challenging spots. And sometimes, as mentors, we're really, really like a stoke person. We have to get people excited about their project again, get them back on track. Another important aspect that is psychosocial is really helping mentees develop their self-efficacy. So again, there's going to be problems. There's going to be things that don't work the way that they should. There's going to be setbacks. But, working through that, figuring out how to solve those hard problems is really the key way to develop that self-efficacy. So once you've been through that, you sort of start to say to yourself, oh, I can do hard things. And then the next one comes along and you're more confident to try to address those challenges. Another psychosocial dimension is helping mentees develop their identity. And there's a lot of discussion about science identity in STEM fields. And science identity is, again, individually responsive because you can craft your own science identity or your own discipline-specific identity. And that really comes down to figuring out, what are your true assets? And this is where an individualized development plan can really come into play as well. What are your true strengths? How do you play to those? What are the right careers that are very, very highly aligned with those strengths? And again, as a mentor, you can help your mentee see these aspects and realities and help guide them to develop that identity. And again, once they have their own identity, they'll feel an increased sense of belonging and experience that greater sense of community. So again, this is still on the soft skills. The next range is looking at diversity and cultural skills. And again, we are really working as a community at UNLV to try to do an ever improving job of supporting diversity on campus. So, what are diversity and cultural skills? Understanding bias, examining one's own implicit bias. We all have biases. We've learned them, again, implicitly through, things that we've been exposed to through our development. It's kind of like baggage you carry, but sometimes we don't know about it, and we need to look at it carefully to see what it is. It's also really helpful as a mentor to try to understand power dynamics and to take a careful look at systems of oppression and how they have systemically influenced populations and their access. And instead of thinking about a deficit model, oh, people don't have these skills, really moving that over to a resource model and looking at what are the things that we can put into place to, help bring students up to a certain point and also take advantage of the incredible things that they're bringing to the table. Mentors also should work to advance equity and inclusion. And you can do this sort of structurally in your research group. We've thought carefully about how we should structure our research group as a learning organization and how we promote sort of a community or an interconnected group where people rely on one another. And again, if you think about and, mindfully implement some of these strategies, it can really transform, that cohesion that you have in your group. Again, if you're a mentee, you play a role in that as being a contributing member to that community, as reaching out to your other team members, to junior students, and helping to build that real sense of community. So even if you are not yet a mentor, you can still really contribute to that. And we need to take active steps to reduce the impact of bias because, again, bias is present. We can't deny it. So what we need to do is we need to take active steps to try to reduce the impact of bias and also reduce the impact of stereotype threat. We also need to help our trainees when they've been exposed to, negative feedback or microaggressions. Because again, these do take a cumulative toll and they can influence a person's self-efficacy pretty dramatically. And the last point says being individually and culturally responsive, but that in itself is a whole dimension. So I'm going to expand on that a little bit. So what is culturally responsive mentorship? And again, this is a whole new arena. I encourage you to look into it more because I think you could teach a whole course on just culturally responsive mentorship. Culturally responsive mentorship comes from the idea of being centered on the individual identities of mentees. This is sometimes also referred to as holistic mentoring, so seeing mentees as a whole person. They have many dimensions to their life. And through, this culturally responsive mentorship, we would want to acknowledge and validate mentee identities and approach this with curiosity. These are conversations that you don't want to be too forceful on, for sure, and use care. But again, it's important to get to know your mentees on a deeper level. Understand a little bit about their contexts, their styles, their lived experiences, and how those aspects are going to shape them as an individual, as a whole person. Again, it's really important to help mentees navigate invalidating experiences. So if a mentee experiences stereotype threat or bias or some other form of microaggression, being able to say like, hey, that was not cool. If I was there, this is what I would have said. I hope somebody advocated for you, helping them address that and to see that that person, the aggressor, was in the wrong. Because again, otherwise it can take a toll on self-efficacy. And again, we really want to be individually and culturally responsive. And this is going to mean that we don't ever have a one size fits all approach to mentoring. And again, that's something that I've learned more and more and more about being a faculty member. Because again, I didn't really receive a lot of training, and I just sort of started as a faculty member and needed to mentor people. And I've learned along the way. And again, that is the number one thing that I would take away or give as advice now, is there is no one size fits all strategy for effective mentoring. It has to be individually responsive, holistic, um, and sensitive, and involve a good deal of these soft skills. So this brings us into sort of the next aspect that I want to emphasize for you all, which is that there's an increasing emphasis on soft skills. So this is based on McKinsey Global Institute Workforce Skills Model. And you can see social and emotional skills are in one of my favorite colors, this sort of golden ochre color. And in 2002, about 17% of a worker's time was spent on social and emotional skills. In 2016, that rose to 18%. And they project that by 2030, more than 21% of an individual's time will be spent on social and emotional aspects. And part of this is interrelated with increasing ways of automating work. So we're going to need to leverage our human skills, our soft skills, more and more and more as more and more work becomes automated. So this is a really, really important aspect. Even tech companies are now emphasizing soft skills when they look at applicants. So what are some of these soft skills? Again, soft skills are categorized as like communication, self-motivation, leadership, responsibility, teamwork, problem solving, decisiveness, the ability to work under pressure and manage your time well, being flexible and accommodating and adaptable, and also negotiating and resolving conflicts when they arise. And again, if you've been listening, which I know you all have, you've heard that these are many of the things that I emphasized that you develop and work on as an effective mentor. So again, communication skills, those are integral to mentor-mentee relationships. Listening skills, again, that is a skill, and sometimes it takes time to develop. Leadership skills, as a mentor, you are leading somebody, you're taking responsibility for them. You're also engaging in teamwork because you need to take feedback, you need to provide feedback, you need to make adjustments along the way. Time management also becomes important because sometimes you're planning your own time as well as helping another person plan their time. You also have to be adaptable and flexible because, again, whenever another person is involved, things are not always going to go according to the master plan. You will also need and develop problem-solving skills because, again, interpersonal connections are extremely complex. Problems will be encountered. So, just really planning for that and thinking about how you can navigate them, working on developing those problem-solving skills is going to be an incredible asset that you gain from engaging in mentor-mentee relationships. Again, conflict resolution, because conflicts will arise. Again, these are areas that I think a lot of people don't feel prepared for and feel somewhat reluctant to wade into. But again, it's almost always true that the conversation is much better had than sort of kept inside. You will also develop skills in empathy. You work very closely with these people. I sort of laughed that nobody would enter into a long-term relationship with somebody, a 6-7 year relationship with somebody just based on a Zoom interview. So why do we do that for graduate studies? These relationships are close and they're long-lasting and they're very important. And so through that closeness, you will develop, a better awareness of others and what they bring to the table. And that empathy is going to go a long way in the workplace. And also the ability to build trust in that relationship so that the communication comes easier. And again, these are all works in progress. You don't have to have them all figured out. And, you know, just engaging in the process of being a mentor will help you work on these things. Okay, so now I just want to brag about some of my incredible colleagues at UNLV and tell you a little bit about some of the very important things that are going on UNLV campus. Again, you know, we are so proud of the incredible diversity that's here at UNLV, and we are also leveraging that to try to get fantastic opportunities for our students. So a faculty member in the Department of Psychology, Dr. Ashley Blackwell, recently got a grant from NASA, and the division of the grant is the Minority University Research and Education Project. So there's an acronym for everything in all these funding agencies. So that's known as the MUREP. And this program is really designed to enhance research, academic, and technological capabilities at minority serving institutions. So again, this is really going to be student focused and really hope to provide stronger education, research opportunities, and also faculty training so that we can do an even better job of, you know, mentoring students in research experiences. And UNLV is one of only 5 universities to receive this new NASA award. So again, it's a big deal. And what you will see as a graduate student are, you know, possibly some of these training opportunities and some of these, you know, related offshoots that will be happening as a result of this funding program, because again, it's curriculum focused. Other colleagues in the Department of Psychology got a National Science Foundation grant under the Division of Undergraduate Research. And this grant is really a research grant to investigate the influence of interpersonal dynamics and sociocultural background as potential mechanisms of variable outcomes during research experiences as an undergraduate. And so they're actually going to be working with undergraduates and mentors, which could be you, to understand the dynamics of the relationship and which factors are contributing to developing, again, a strong mentor-mentee relationship. So they hope to gain insights about how students and mentors influence one another and how these interactions may be shaped by sociocultural identities that, you know, each individual really brings to the table in these complex relationships. This is through the grad college. We received, UNLV received an Alfred P. Sloan Foundation grant through the Sloan Centers for Systemic Change. And I am deeply excited about the opportunities that this will provide. And I feel like I'm almost stealing thunder from the grad college, but this is an incredible, incredible opportunity. And I think that, you know, this is going to provide a lot of avenues for faculty, graduate students, and other people on campus to really develop their mentorship skills. And, you know, I'm just so excited to see all the different ways that this is going to really enhance our environment here. The goal of these grants is to transform doctoral education programs in STEM fields and remove entrenched barriers to student success, improve student outcomes, and create educational environments that are more effective and equitable for all. So again, I'm super excited about these opportunities. And again, this UNLV was one of only 10, I think, or something like that, universities or institutions to receive this funding. So again, this is a wonderful time to be at UNLV. This is a great context to work on developing your mentorship skills. There are also tons of incredible, very, very helpful external resources. And I'm going to talk us through a little bit, and then I actually want to show you some of the web pages as well. And I think we're doing okay for time. So the first one we're talking about is the Center for the Improvement of Mentored Experiences in Research, or CIMER. And I pulled these little clips from each individual website to sort of get the gist of the mission of each different site that I'm recommending. So from CIMER, they say that effective research mentorship relationships are critical for developing the next generation of researchers. CIMER faculty and staff investigate approaches for improving research mentoring relationships for organizations and institutions. And CIMER develops, implements, and evaluates mentor and mentee training using theoretically grounded, evidence-based, and culturally responsive training interventions and investigations. The next is the National Research Mentoring Network. This is a great site that you can actually build your own mentoring network out. You can actually find and align with mentors through this network, but there's also tons of training here. And the mission of the National Research Mentoring Network is to provide researchers across all career stages in the biomedical, behavioral, clinical, and social sciences with evidence-based mentorship and professional development programming that emphasizes the benefits and challenges of diversity, inclusivity, and culture. And then the last that I'm going to touch on, although there are more, and I'm sure there's some that I missed that are great, is sponsored by the National Institutes of Health, and it's called the Diversity Program Consortium. It's a network of institutions funded by the National Institutes of Health to improve training and mentoring and to enhance individual success in biomedical research careers. And this initiative aims to transform institutional culture in biomedical training and mentoring nationwide, again, to become more individually responsive, culturally responsive, because we know how critical this is for promoting trainees. So before we go into the summary, I'm just going to stop sharing this screen so that we can take a look at some of those other websites. And I just got to get them open here properly. Please don't look at how many tabs I have open. All right, can everybody see that screen okay? Yes, okay. So this is the Diversity Program Consortium. I went to a spot where I thought the most interesting and relevant content might be for the group today. So there are events, but I thought this aspect on hallmarks of success was particularly interesting because, again, it helps us consider, you know, what are those key aspects? How do we help our mentees achieve them if we're acting as a mentor, or if we're a mentee, you know, what are the things that we should be looking for, you know, to help foster success. On CIMER, I wanted to draw your attention to training services. There is mentor training, and there's also a variety of other types of training options available. There's all kinds of public events that are offered through CIMER. And, you know, you can also, again, if mentoring is very interesting to you, they have publications that have resulted from the research that's been done through CIMER. So you can take a look at that, look at the primary research. And again, there's an incredible number of different resources that are available through CIMER. And then this is the last one I wanted to touch on, which is this is through I forget the acronym, the National Research Mentorship Network, I believe it is, but I'm not 100% sure because they just show the acronym there. But what I really like about this website is they break it down into where you are at in your career. And so you can, as an undergraduate student, find resources that are suitable for you. If you go and click on one of these, you can actually use this My Mentor tool. And again, part of this is to set up networks. So if you feel like you need a mentor for a certain aspect that you're not getting, whether you're a graduate student or at some other stage, you can actually use the My Mentor tool to find an external person, you know, and even if you exchange a few emails with them, it might be a form of support that you really need in a certain aspect of your mentor-mentee journey. So this is a great resource for people at all career stages. In addition, they also have a whole bunch of webinars, professional development focused, so they're not all focused on mentoring per se, but they are professional development focused, tons of grant writing, fellowship writing information as well. So those are a few of the sites that I would definitely recommend. And when I send out the slides, I'll make sure that the full URL is in there so that you can get to these places easily. So again, to summarize sort of the things that we've been talking through so far, you may already be both a mentee and a mentor, and that's a good thing because again, you learn a lot from mentoring others. And as a mentee, that mentorship experience is incredibly valuable. I didn't do too much mentoring until I became a postdoc, and then I did a whole bunch at once. And I feel like if you're a graduate student and you've already got some exposure to being a mentor, that's incredibly valuable. And if you don't yet have that exposure, but you would like it, talk to your direct mentor because I'm sure they would love to hand off some of that responsibility to you. And again, it's a great professional development experience for you. You will develop so many soft skills that are highly marketable. We talked a lot about how mentoring is so much more than the hard skills. Again, the stuff that sort of comes to mind automatically when we think of mentoring. And really effective mentoring relies very heavily on soft skills. And a lot of focus is turning to seeing mentees holistically as whole people, with many dimensions, and trying to understand how those dimensions influence that person, their goals, their values, and how that also interfaces with the relationship that you develop with them. We also talked about developing strategies for individually or culturally responsive mentorship. So once we can see mentees as whole people, what do we do with that? How do we engage with them? How do we develop effective strategies? And some of that is going to involve some reflection of ourselves, examining our own biases, and really sort of being ready to advocate, support, and protect students depending upon what they are experiencing. Again, we talked about recognizing and leveraging the soft skills that you're already developing through mentoring. Again, this is why when you finish a PhD, you end up being incredibly marketable. It's because not only have you learned discipline-specific knowledge, but you've solved hard problems. You've been in complex settings with multiple team members, and you've probably done some extent of mentoring, and you've done teaching. So it's really this multifaceted nature that makes completion of a PhD such an asset. And so, really being able to leverage those skills, talk to potential employers about, specific ways that you've worked on your communication skills, worked on your leadership skills, worked on your conflict resolution skills through mentorship is going to be incredibly valuable. Again, I encourage you to check out or at least keep your ear out for some of those campus initiatives focusing on mentoring. There may be additional training opportunities for graduate students, and certainly your faculty members will be engaging in some of those training opportunities as well. And again, if this is important to you, if this is a core value for you, I'm guessing so because you're here, then you might consider looking at some of these external resources and getting additional training. And that's all that I prepared. I'm really hoping that there are questions or conversation or discussion. Please feel free.
Well, I can get us started with a question.
Sure.
Do you think that mentee-mentor relationships formed via video conference is just as meaningful as a relationship that you could form in person or like face to face?
That is a challenging one. I think I was joking before most people arrived that I'm kind of an in-person person, and I really I prefer teaching in person and I prefer meeting in person. But I do also think that the ability to have a remote relationship with somebody is an incredible advantage that we have now that we didn't have before. And so I do think that there are certain limitations, and it will be important for you to have some in-person connections. Now you could find a mentor at MIT or Boston University and, talk to them remotely. And, that would not have been as possible or as feasible before. So I think, my response is a bit complicated and a bit vague probably, but I would say it's both. It's both full of limitations, but an incredible opportunity that, again, is facilitated by this technology. And again, this is not technology I love. I begrudge it a lot because I'd much rather be with people in person. But again, we have to see it for some of those advantages that it does provide. It's a good question.
I have a question.
Yeah, great.
Thanks for sharing the knowledge and the skills. I'm just wondering, are you going to share this slide?
Absolutely. Yes, I will provide them as a PDF to the Grad Academy and leave it in their capable hands. And then I believe they have an attendee list that they will disseminate to. And I think in addition, the recording will also be available on the YouTube. Is that right? Yes.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay,
Right.
so
Thank you.
I will give the slides along with those links to some of the external resources, and then absolutely you can always check back on the Grad Academy YouTube to see the video if you missed something that I said too, because I talk fast.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I can ask another question
Sure.
if it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
How can I measure my success as a mentor?
You're on fire with the questions today. That's a great one. It's a long game, mentoring. So I think I'm seeing some of my very first signs of success as a mentor, when people go on to do well. I think in the short term, you can look at your relationships and understand, like, does it feel tense? Are there unresolved issues? And, sometimes there's power dynamic and it's hard and we have to try to break that down. For people, that's not always possible. Have a conversation. I think, it's incredible what a conversation can do. I often remind my mentees that they can tell me how things are going from their perspective, because I think sometimes the mentor communication seems to be outgoing, but we also need to ask and solicit feedback on how things are going. So having that conversation in the short term could be a way. But again, it is such a long game that, you might not see those benefits of your role for a person for years. And I have some people that I mentored when I was a postdoc that, they now have careers, they're doing various things. And those are probably some of the first ways that I feel like I really measured it, outside of those momentary assessments that you can do. Yeah, that's a good question. I like it. I'm going to think more about it, which is how I know it's a very good question. Maybe we can do a quick poll too. You guys can just like use the hand emoji or whatever it is. How many people are actively mentoring another person right now? Raise your hand or thumbs up. Yeah, anything? Amazing. Yeah, so quite a few people already are already engaging in mentoring. And, again, if you're not yet, there are many ways to get involved. And again, I really encourage you to talk to your direct mentor, because I'm sure they would love support in terms of the mentorship that they're providing. So ways that you can help foster junior students or work with undergraduates in your discipline.
Are you okay with wrapping up, Rochelle?
Absolutely. I will not force anybody to stay here. And wait around. Absolutely. Sounds great.
Awesome. Thank you for giving us your time and coming here and like giving us this valuable information for the next level mentorship workshop. Like we really appreciate it. And I appreciate all the participants for joining in as well.
Just saying thank you guys all for coming. Absolutely. It's great.
Awesome. And before you guys go, if you can, I'd like to have you guys fill out a survey on this workshop that you guys attended. I'm going to drop the link in the chat. Feel free to take it. It's not compulsory. Sweet. And I hope everyone has a nice day. Nice rest of your day. Thank you for joining us. And that's that's all for today.
Thanks, everyone. And feel free to reach out to me directly if you have any questions.